Next, we're going to tackle the question of, I might be ready to hire a sales rep, but can I actually afford one? Do I have the cash to invest in a salesperson? No matter how little you spend, even if it's 100% commission, you're still going to have to come up with a bunch of money that's going to replace your time, the opportunity costs, the hiring costs, the training costs. There might be some office space costs. It just costs a lot more than you think. There are two types of costs that come into hiring somebody, and they both have hard and soft costs. The soft costs are usually your downtime, your lost opportunity time, that kind of stuff. But the hard costs are sometimes surprising. Now, granted, you might have an exception. You might run into a waiter or a waitress that you say, you could be the next me and you can come work for me. And they may work out. That's fantastic. But let's start with the idea that you don't know anybody, you've run out of kids or uncles or aunts or whatever it is. You got to find somebody in the mass population, right? So the first cost we're going to have is going to be ads. Monster these days, I just checked it last week, $400 to place posting. And I don't know if you've been there lately, but you go into Monster and you can get lost pretty fast. So if you think you're going to stand out in one of those ads and that's going to be it, you might want to rethink it. Craigslist used to be free, now it's $35. And by the time you post it, you're buried down way far below all the other junk that's out there. So just those two ads, you're at $500. Now you put it in a ZipRecruiter or any of these other formats, LinkedIn, you could have a healthy advertising budget just to let people know you exist. But that's probably going to be what you have to do. Now the opportunity cost or the soft cost that comes along with the ads is, unfortunately, in this day and age, it's really easy to click apply, 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 apply. And you don't know what you're applying for, they don't care. You'll know when you meet them because you'll call them in for an interview and they'll be the first ones to say, what do you do here? Right? They didn't care enough to read your ad, they just know that it paid a certain amount or it was in a certain area and they clicked apply. That's the downside of the sort of digital advertising that exists today, in addition to the costs. But ads are a huge cost. The second cost in the pre-hire stage, I alluded to in the first one, which is headhunters. Headhunters, in my experience, cost anywhere between, let's say, 20 to maybe 35% of their first year pay. So if you're hiring a sales rep for a $50,000 comp package, they might want $10,000, $15,000 just on day one. Now, it could come with a guarantee of some sort of replacement value or another applicant or whatever. But it's usually a pretty expensive opportunity or a pretty expensive way to find a candidate. And as I mentioned in the previous unit, if you saw that one about being ready, there's some subtlety that goes into a headhunter. And I've been the beneficiary of good headhunters and I've been sort of the victim of headhunters. But one thing they do is they send you what they think you want to hire, whether it's right for the job or not. So they send you applicants that are what you asked for, which obviously that's what you're going to do. That's what everybody would do, right? So you say you want an athlete, they go find you an athlete. You say you want a tech guy, a gal, they're going to send you those. But you have to really know what you want, otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time weeding through what they think you want. The other side is you now are working with somebody who's, I don't want to say this horribly, but they're a slave to the deal, right? They have an obligation to make money, and they make money when a candidate is put with an employer. So they have it in their best interest to get their person hired by you. So there's constant calling. How do you like them? They have other offers. There's pressure being put on. A headhunter operation is expensive, pressure-packed, and you're slightly out of control. But if that's what you need to do to get the best applicants, that might be what you have to do. By far, the biggest cost to your new hire, pre-hire package is the interview time itself. If your business is humming, which hopefully it is if you're hiring a rep, if it's humming, your time is worth money, right? Your time as the owner is really worth money. And if you're hiring a sales rep that you're going to manage, you have to interview them. You have to interview them extensively. I would recommend that you bring them in 2, 3, even 4 different times. And you're going to interview them, your senior team is going to interview them, maybe a consultant will interview them, you'll have some employees interview them. All of this adds up. It's huge amounts of money. It's all soft. You're not writing a check to anybody for this process, but when you turn around and you go, what did it cost to hire somebody? You have a significant amount of investment in just the interview time alone. And if you're doing it right and you bring in 3, 4, 5 candidates that are all really good, Now you're talking not 4 interviews, but 20 interviews. So what's 20 hours of your time cost? You have to ask yourself before you start down this process. That might make a headhunter worth the value if you're really adding up to the cost, right? If your time is worth more than it costs, then it's worth it, right? So that is the secondary, the real big cost to this that's hard to calculate. Now we move to the post-hire costs. And this is where it starts to hurt your pocketbook a little bit, right? Because you've put them on your payroll. As soon as you add them to your payroll, it really sinks in. Yeah, you had a $500 monster ad cost. You can justify that. But now they're on your payroll for $1,000 a week, right? And you had to get a desk and a computer and you got to do all this stuff. It adds up really, really fast. And any new hire, especially a salesperson, takes some time to get up and rolling. So the beginning cost of that sales rep can really add up, and it comes in 3 or 4 different sort of categories. First category is really the initial onboarding orientation process. For a salesperson who really represents your whole company out in the world, they have to know a lot about your company. If you're going to do this right, they have to know your company. They have to know what you stand for, who you are, what you do. You have to get them out there. In the best onboarding organization I was a part of, when I hired a sales rep, I basically gave them to the operations department for a week. Now, I'm going to go over in different parts of this training what we learned to do with them, but I gave them to them for a whole week. So it was probably $2,000 worth of expense before they even sat in their desk to learn how to sell. The reason we did that was so that they knew our business and they knew what we did and why we did what we did, right? But a whole week before they even were really mine, but it was well worth it. The second one is you have to allocate some time for funnel building. Unless you're in a sort of a leads falling from the sky retail environment or something where they just close deals that show up, they're going to have to build a funnel. And depending on what type of business you're in, the lead time could be substantial. If you sell things that are subject to an RFP process, they have to go get an RFP. They have to wait for it to come out, then they have to submit a bid, then they have to hope to be a finalist, all that kind of stuff. It might be 6 months before that transaction is awarded to anyone. Now, I would ask you, did you need a rep to get an RFP? You probably didn't, but that's a different module. The third part of the payroll piece is the extended ramp up, sort of the patience barrier, right? How long can you last until you're sure that this person was a good hire? Some people it's not very long, other people it's a very long time. You'll have to find out for yourself when you hire somebody what sort of patience you have for that. We're going to deal with how you manage those people through the process, but you need to allocate for a significant amount of time, much more than you thought, that all of that money, all that payroll is going into an investment that may or may not pay off. It may feel like more like a lottery ticket, frankly, but you have to roll the dice and see what happens. I know I'm mixing metaphors, lottery tickets and dice, but you get the idea. Gambling nonetheless. If you're trying to figure out how long you should wait to see if somebody's a success, or how much money you should invest, which is the topic here, do I have the money to afford a new rep? You should probably look at the life cycle of a sales process and compare it to the time value of that client, right? The long-term value of that client. If they're going to get one customer a year, but that one customer generates $100,000 in gross profit, that's a significant difference compared to somebody that's rolling, that's going to roll in and they're going to get you 10, 15 clients that generate $50 a year of gross profit. Everything's going to be different. So you need to look at the value of the clients, how long it's going to take, and then sort of match everything up. A common mistake, and I hope you avoid this, is trying to take the best of both worlds. Like, I'll take the cheap sales rep who doesn't really know anything, but then I'm going to send them in and try to close $1 million deals, right? The math might work, but it's not going to pan out because the disconnect is too great between the client's expectation of what the sales rep is supposed to be all about and your investment. So you have to match everything, plan for the best, look for signs that something didn't maybe work out the way that it should, but you need to plan for a long cycle with lots of money being invested. A significant cost to the post-hire phase is what I'd like to call owner downtime. So most of you have been selling your organization yourself. Every hour you get, you go out, you take a call, you make a call, you go to a meeting, you do some networking. Something likely comes from it, right? A transaction either develops, a relationship. Every minute that you're worrying about a new sales rep is a minute you can't be doing that. So your limit in production, your deduction in production, that's a pretty good rhyme, your deduction in production has to be allocated into this. So when you look at this and say, yeah, it shouldn't be that bad, it's only going to take me 10, 15 hours to get this person up to speed, what could you have done in that 10 to 15 hours? And I'm going to caution you, it's a little bit off point, but I want to caution you this. Beware of trying to make yourself look like a great hiring manager by feeding them the leads that you would have gotten. So you really need to look at this and go, is this person bringing me new business that I wouldn't have gotten with the time I'm spending with them? Because presumably you'd still go get the business that you lost, you didn't have the time for this month, presumably you can go get it next month. But if you took that opportunity you would have had, you gave it to them, and made yourself look great as a hiring manager, you're kind of stacking the deck and fooling yourself. So to sum up, whether I'm able to afford a new rep, it's not as mathematical as you think, but you have to take all of the variables into account. You have to know what it's going to do to you as the owner. You have to know what it's going to do to the organization as fellow trainers. You have to plan probably for the worst, hope for the best, maybe land up in the middle somewhere. But it's going to be a significant cost that has a delayed impact that you have to really be ready to absorb and treat as an investment.